Episode 6 of Under Salt Marsh starts with Jackie shocked and questioning why Dylan is wearing a white hazmat suit. She immediately brings up the hair on Kevin's body and questions whether Dylan is actually the murderer. Dylan explains he's been cleaning stuff up, hence the suit. Jackie brings up the toxic waste and Nessa drawing a man in the hazmat suit, but Dylan is upset and curses at her for the accusations. He decides to leave, more preoccupied with trying to find James, who's still missing. Now, a lot of the townsfolk are in the woods trying to find the boy, while Dylan drives into the heart of town where the water is rising fast. In fact, a wave comes and knocks Dylan's truck right into a telephone pole. Meanwhile, Bull heads to the abandoned theme park, Sunnyside, to try and get some answers. Now, when he shows, he finds a whole bunch of barrels full of toxic waste. Some seawalls are here too, and it becomes clear that Sunnyside is being used as a spot where Dylan was recycling hazardous waste. They've been crushing it, then putting it into the concrete seawalls. And this explains why Dylan mentioned the Black Soul story to Kevin and James earlier in the season. He didn't want the boys going near Sunnyside because of the waste. However, this had an adverse effect on Kevin, who went hunting and found the waste. A loud noise from deeper in the facility draws Bull into the darkness, and he not only finds hazmat suits hanging up, but also the killer. It turns out to be Mac. Now, Dylan and Jackie eventually speak plainly, where Dylan explains the only other person with access to Sunnyside is Mac, who also wears a hazmat suit, sometimes the same one as Dylan. And this explains why Dylan's hair was on Kevin. Now, Bull goes hunting, but unfortunately Mac gets to jump on him first and locks the detective inside one of the rooms. The sea level continues to rise and things don't look good. Now, Bull pounds on the vents and calls for help, but it's James who heeds the call. It turns out he's been hiding out in Sunnyside all this time, and he manages to help Bull out. And meanwhile, Mac heads back home, where Dylan and Jackie both confront him about the seawall. Dylan tries to protect Jackie when she boldly challenges Mac, who's currently holding a knife, and ends up stabbed for his troubles. As Jackie tends to him, Mac rushes out the building. Now, when Bull heads back into town, handing James back to his dad, Jackie races into the marshes to find Mac alongside Bull. Jess is nowhere to be found at this point. Now, Mac slits his wrist when both Jackie and Bull catch up to him in the marshes. Now, he explains that when he found Nessa originally, she screamed for Jackie. Kevin did the same thing when Mac killed him too, and both thought Jackie could fix the toxic waste issue. Now, Kevin clearly stood in the toxic waste when he arrived at Sunnyside because it burned through his wellies. He was in a panic and struggling, but Mac tried to help clean it up. However, as Kevin kept shouting and raving, Mac claimed he had no choice and killed the boy there and then. He also chalks Nessa's death up to a kindness, believing she would have died from her injuries otherwise. Jackie is enraged hearing this confession and grabs the guy, looking set to drown him in the marshes. Bull watches on, silently, until Jackie stops at the last second and decides proper justice should be served in a court of law. Now, in the morning, the storm passes and everybody leaves the barn. Overlooking their village, the townsfolk are shocked to see how flooded the area is. I mean, they were warned about this of course, but the whole place is a complete mess, submerged in water. It's taken 38 minutes in the episode, but Jess finally shows up here during the aftermath of everything, while Bull was keeping Mac in a secluded room away from everybody. Now, Bull tells Jess that in their report, they should be upfront with his involvement with Jackie. He knows he could be laid off for gross negligence here, but that's a risk he's willing to take. Jess knows that Bull included Jackie for her own sake, to try and help her gain some closure, and Jess is actually okay with that. Now, Mac hasn't admitted to August's death, but it's assumed that he also killed August too. Jackie embraces the idea of being pregnant and starts to be a bit more upfront about her and Dylan's relationship. Baby steps, of course, no pun intended, while Bull speaks to Morgan about their plans going forward. Solomon opens up the barn to the townsfolk, realising they need each other right now, and comments how it's refreshing to see everybody together. Ned is still missing though, having run away last episode. Solomon is proud of Jackie for at least trying to make things right, while he's still pissed at Ned for leaving, calling him a coward. Jackie and Bull then sit together, where the latter decides he's going to get away for a bit. He's probably going to leave the police force, whether temporarily or forever is unclear, but these two patch up their differences all the same. He kisses her on the cheek and promises to send a postcard wherever he ends up. So Under Salt Marsh ends with a dramatic final episode where we finally discover that the killer is none other than Mac Jones. There's no wild twist or crazy shenanigans that come with this though, and my theory of Danny being the killer doesn't hold weight either unfortunately, and we're left to assume Mac killed August, although we don't really get proper confirmation of this. They're lucky that Mac is willing to confess, to be honest, because there's not much evidence against him. The flooding will have ruined a lot of the evidence they gained up until this point, which includes the wellies and the documents in storage. In the end, we do get some closure for Bull and Jackie though, who patch up their differences and find themselves in a much better spot now that the case is solved. Jess is right, Bull did this for Jackie because she needed closure. Now that she's got that, perhaps she can focus on her own child and slowly opening up to the townsfolk about her and Dylan. It's certainly a fitting end for her story, and in many ways it's the same for Bull too, who cracks a smile at the end and finally seems to have made peace with the demons of his past. As the toxic waste situation still isn't properly resolved though, and with the town flooded, we don't actually know how these guys will survive going forward without evacuating. In the end though, Under Salt Marsh finishes with a decent, if slightly underwhelming finale. However, the character endings for both Bull and Jackie certainly help give this show some much needed closure. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.